Welcome to Face the Facts. I am Nick Face here once again. We have a special guest with us making his grand return to Face the Facts. A little different from the North Reading community, so they can get a chance to meet you. But this is Kevin Vent, and we welcome him back to the original version from Face the Facts.
That's right.
A little story about that for our audience at home. This is the man that back in 2007 was able to predict that Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen were coming to the Celtics.
On the air.
And
I also predicted that if that happened, they would win a championship.
So we're hoping the same thing happens. Maybe Kevin Love is the answer or whatever. So
that's right.
He's the expert, so hopefully
I don't know about the expert, but it was certainly
hopefully we're in for a special night here. And for the show, in case you haven't seen it at home, this is our sports show where we talk about Red Sox news and Patriots news, Bruins Celtics, and basically break down all the things that have been going on, and there has been quite a lot going on, even at a national stage.
The national stage, and of course you have the World Cup going on too. I don't know how.
And I did not even put that in my script, but that's right. The World Cup is going on, and we have to find a little home for that in our show.
Little place for that.
A little place for that too. So we hope you enjoy this episode tonight, and we're going to kick it off first with the Boston Bruins, as a matter of fact. And we had some big news this week towards the beginning that Sean Thornton is not going to be coming back with the Bruins anymore.
By the Bruins, yeah. I was a little surprised by that. Given that they are, one season away from going into the Stanley Cup Finals and 2 seasons away from winning the Stanley Cup Finals, it seems to be a little bit of an overreaction, in my opinion, to decide to break up the team at this point in time. I think if I were the general manager of the Bruins, Peter Chiarelli, I would give it one more shot. Is it a
panic move?
I don't know if I would say panic.
Yeah.
I think it's a calculated look at what they have, and they've decided that they can't win with what they have.
Right.
So might as well rebuild at this point.
What I looked at when I saw that he wasn't going to be coming back, I thought maybe this has something to do with the cap. And maybe they're trying to get other pieces to the puzzle to assemble a team that can not only produce in the regular season, because the Bruins did that this year.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
Best team in the
they
Eastern
have
Conference.
to produce in the playoffs.
Yep.
There was too many missed opportunities with empty nets and tip posts.
Well, the number of shots on goal that clanked off the post this year.
It was incredible.
I mean, they say every game is a game of inches, and that was literally a game of inches for them this year. But at the same time, if you looked at it from the point of view that look at all the shots on goal they had, and had it been an inch this way, an inch that way, they would have blown through that second round series.
Yeah.
Were they really in a position where they should start to, I hate to use the word rebuild because that's not necessarily true, but I mean, obviously Sean Thornton is the centerpiece of that team in terms of scoring, and it's by saying they're not going to re-sign him.
It was like he assembled, he was a Bruin. That's a true definition of what you want as a Bruin, someone who's aggressive.
Yep.
He's a good teammate, good contributor on and off the ice.
Yep. Physical presence on the ice.
And he does the job, and almost like that unsung hero type.
Sure.
Granted, he did not have a great year this year with suspensions and water bottle squirting. But, he's going to be missed. Yep. He's going to be missed.
So I think to determine what the Bruins are actually going to do, we really need to look at what happens next.
Yep.
Are they going to let someone else go, Lucic or something like that, or are they going to maybe take the money they would have spent on Thornton and spend it on another name? If they do that, then maybe it's simply a retooling.
There certainly are a lot of different options that the Bruins want to do. I do think, though, option one, I think they have to bring Iginla back.
Okay.
At least from what we saw in the regular season.
Even at his age.
He fits the system.
Okay.
And if the system is working like it had, he produced at least in the playoffs.
Yes, he did.
People like Krejci and Marchand and Lucic, on the other hand, you can look at them and say, this is 2-3 years now that we've been in the playoffs. They had a chance, and they have really not stepped up and got that big goal.
And it's not even on the offensive side. I really feel as though, especially in that second round series, Tuukka Rask really had a bad series.
Yeah.
And you know what hockey is you can ride a hot goalie. Even a mediocre
we saw that
team,
with Tim Thomas
even
from
a mediocre
2011.
team can ride a hot goalie all the way. But the reverse happens. A good team can fall when the goalie has a bad series.
Sure.
And I'm not blaming the whole thing on him because the whole thing isn't his fault.
Yep.
But if he had the type of series he's capable of having,
Right.
even the missed goals wouldn't have been a problem for them in that series. So
I even look at some of those plays from Tuukka that he might have had something to do with our defense. And
Could be.
with their youth at defense, even though they did lose, they did get the quality time and learning experience that they're going to hopefully need
right.
for maybe this coming
Which
season.
is why I go back to, is this a panic move to not re-sign Thornton? Because it seems like a lot of the tools there. But like I said, if they come back and they sign someone with the Thornton money, and it's just a simple retooling of what they're doing, then it seems like maybe
they're trying to, I don't want to use the word cheap, but they're trying to make sure that their pieces
fiscally
are
responsible.
Yeah, like $500,000, like minuscule numbers for organization to make these to make magic happen.
Make it work. Yeah.
So
it'll be interesting to see what happens with that.
I will miss him, but the most important thing you can remember from him is he helped win the Stanley Cup
did help.
and he got his ring and pretty much did whatever he could to be a Bruin.
Yep. And I think he will be missed here, and I think he will not have a problem signing with another team. I think there are teams that are looking for that kind of player, and it wouldn't surprise me to see him in another Stanley Cup Finals in next year.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of the Stanley Cup Finals,
yes,
that was a good little segue.
Ooh, that was nice. That was good. Yeah.
The Kings are our winners this year versus the Rangers of New York that were in this Stanley Cup. I have to say I wasn't surprised.
I wasn't surprised either. In fact, I think the Rangers were lucky to get there.
Yeah.
Partially because the Bruins were knocked out so early, but I just think they were lucky to get there. And they were ones where the Rangers were a team where a couple of those bounces that didn't go the Bruins' direction went the Rangers' direction by an inch or two in the earlier rounds. And so to be there, they were fortunate. They didn't really put up much of a fight against LA.
No, they really didn't. And I think
this is an LA team that beat Chicago to get there, so you knew that they were tough.
That almost was the Stanley Cup.
That almost was the Stanley Cup right there.
Because Chicago, we know that the Bruins had them last year, and they're a very talented team.
And again, they were the best team in the Western Conference during the regular season. Not that in hockey, probably the regular season means the least out of all the four major sports in terms of determining. But even so, they were the best team in the Western Conference during the regular season. And to have Chicago knocked out by LA really told you something.
What I saw from the series, at least from the Kings side, they were the team that was on the verge of just going home.
Yeah.
In 3 of their series that they were there.
Yeah.
And that showed a team that has that no quit attitude, that can put players together, get the job done, like their goalie, ride the hot hand. Ride the hot hand of like an Andre Kopitar or players like that. He get the job done.
It shows that thing that you can never fully identify, which is mental toughness.
Yeah.
That mental toughness.
They had it. That was a team that had it.
They absolutely had it this year, and it showed. Obviously, they won the Stanley Cup, so obviously that they carried that all the way through.
Well, I am disappointed that hockey's ended. I do have to say it's one of the most exciting sports to watch, playoff-wise.
Sure.
And in the Stanley Cup,
I just get annoyed that we're watching hockey in June.
Yeah, it is kind of weird when it's like 80 degrees.
It's 80 degrees out and we're watching
70
hockey.
Whatever it is.
I realize that we'll never do this for financial reasons, but you almost wish they would shorten the regular season to 60 games instead of 81 games, and play the playoffs in April and March when you have March Madness. It would be great.
They are stretched out a little bit too much.
Yeah, think about this. You had March Madness in March, then you go right into the Stanley Cup playoffs in April and May, and then right to the NBA playoffs in June. It would be great.
It would be. That way you don't have to. I mean, it's very tough to watch sports in April with baseball, and you got basketball going on, hockey.
You get a lot of stuff going on.
It's crazy. Yeah. It is crazy. Yeah. Now we'll probably see football come in with April.
Well, you usually have the summer football stuff coming in.
You do. You do. Well, with the NBA Finals, we had another great series, great turnout here, and this time it went to the Spurs. It was against the Kings. It was the Spurs against the Heat. They both play kind of in the same area with the thing, but what I'm looking at from the Spurs at least was a team that really captivated what a team's about.
Oh, absolutely. Their team play was fantastic. That's some of the best passing attack I've seen a team do really since the mid-'80s, since the '86 Celtics. Maybe that's but I mean, just the team play that they showed proved that a good team that plays as a team can beat a team of all-stars. which is what the Heat
It
have.
was pretty fitting to have the Spurs play the Heat.
Yes.
The Heat are a team that relies strictly upon LeBron James.
Yep.
Maybe before, when LeBron first came, it was a little bit of a mix-up between Bosh and Wade, but not this year. Not this year at all.
This year, the Heat exemplify the modern-day NBA basketball team, which is an isolation game team where you pass the ball to your star and let him make a move and get to the basket on his own, and not a lot else going on.
Right.
And then the other players pick up the table scraps. The Spurs represent what I would call a classic basketball team, where you have your stars in a Tony Parker and a Manu Ginobili and Tim Duncan, of course, but they work together as a group. And when we saw that in the fact that what's his name there was the MVP, not even one of the stars.
What was his name?
Yeah.
Leonard.
Leonard was the MVP.
MVP.
And you know why he was the MVP? Because he defended LeBron.
Exactly.
He shut him out. And he did a terrific job on LeBron, and that made him the MVP. And he deserved the MVP of that series.
He did.
So it really was a clash of two styles, and I'm very pleased that the good style won, because if the Heat had won, it would show that the current NBA game would continue to go in that direction. I just think it's a boring brand of basketball.
I personally can't stand when a person like LeBron or something like that sits back at the line, 42 points here.
Yeah.
Oh, we get a win. Barely. But that's the mentality and how basketball was shifting towards. With this is huge for basketball.
The piece that I can't stand with that style of play is the LeBron putting his shoulder down and driving in and just assuming they're going to call a foul and then going to the line. And it's boring. It's boring. But with the way that the Spurs move the ball, the kind of team game they play, it's still athletic, and it's a much more interesting brand of basketball. And I'm glad that they won.
Yeah, I was totally impressed with the series, and I was very happy to see the Spurs win. They deserved it. They were the best team in the league this year.
All year. And, fifth title for Tim Duncan and Greg Popovich together. And you really have to start a lot of things online over the last week about, suddenly, where does Tim Duncan fall in the pantheon of NBA stars?
And what about the pantheon of also NBA coaches of all time?
Well, you got to put
Popovich right up there.
You got to put Popovich right there. I mean, apart from Pat Riley and Phil Jackson and Red Auerbach. I mean, he's in that in terms of championships. He's in that pantheon.
He has to be.
And he's been there for so long, and he keeps doing it. The Spurs have been in the playoffs all 13 years of Duncan's career. Every single year. I mean, they never miss the playoffs. I mean, they are really the model NBA franchise, in my opinion. They built it all through the draft.
Him, huh?
They have a great coach. They have admittedly aging stars, but they drafted all those stars.
Is it almost like a sign that age really doesn't matter sometimes? Sometimes.
Yeah.
But basically, under the style of Popovich, age doesn't seem to
Well, I
matter
think it
so
eventually will catch up.
Yeah,
with it,
it will.
But it does seem to have that point that comes across there, and so I think it was a good series for that to come out, and I'm how can you not like the Spurs?
You have to.
How can you not like the Spurs? I mean,
you have to. But now here's the interesting part of this whole thing. Now that the Heat lost, they have 2 championships.
Yep.
But
not 1, not 2, not 3.
Where do they go from here?
Well, I think it all comes down to what LeBron does. If LeBron's a free agent this year, if LeBron chooses to stay in Miami, then I think probably that nucleus of Wade and Bosh will stay.
Right.
If LeBron chooses to walk, I think they probably, I think Wade probably stays. I also think that Bosh will walk if LeBron walks. I think Bosh may walk anyway, even if LeBron stays, because Bosh is the one of the 3 who's most likely to go and chase the money, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. I see Wade staying. He has an over $20 million option.
No one else can pay him.
I'll take his option.
No one can pay Wade as much as the Heat can. Number one.
Exactly.
Number 2, he is a lifelong Heat.
He is.
He has won 3 championships there, not just the 2, because he won the one with Shaq back in the day.
Yeah.
So, to leave for a year or 2 to go to Chicago or L.A. or something like that, it just doesn't seem to be in his character.
No,
He's
it doesn't seem to make sense.
Finish his career with the Heat or stay with the Heat and have the Heat trade him, a la Paul Pierce, that kind of thing. But I think he stays probably. But it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with LeBron.
The domino of LeBron James, the decision part 2.
The decision part 2. And
I'm going to take my talents.
So let me ask you this question: if LeBron leaves South Beach, where does he go? What do you think the most likely?
I'm leaning right
landing
now
point?
towards the New York Knicks.
New York
The
Knicks.
reason I'm leaning towards that is there's something more to the story with Phil Jackson stepping in and being, president of basketball operations and things like that. I know the Bulls have come up a couple times with different
Bulls.
things
Lakers
there.
have been mentioned.
Lakers have been mentioned.
Cavs have been mentioned going back to
Yeah,
Cleveland.
going back to Cleveland,
Which I don't see
happening. He's already ruined his welcome there, so they don't. I don't think they would take him
He'd
back.
a better
as a
chance
matter of
playing
fact.
for the Cleveland Browns than for the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Yes, he would be, and being their starting quarterback. But that'd be interesting, wouldn't it? I would be shocked actually not to see him with the Knicks. I would be shocked not to.
Yeah, well, I think that's likely. I think everything online today has been talking about Chicago, but that's all speculation. Until you know he's leaving, it's all speculation. I don't see him going to L.A. I just don't. Though the city itself and the franchise, of course, is an attractive one. Kobe's at the end, and who knows if Kobe's even ever going to play again.
Yeah,
and I just don't see him going.
I don't see Kobe and LeBron even matching up together.
No,
I just don't see it.
They're the same kind of player.
Yeah.
Kobe's better, in my opinion, overall than LeBron. In terms of when you look at his body of work than LeBron, and I don't see Kobe giving the ball up to LeBron.
No.
I just
No
don't
way.
see it happening.
I don't either.
So I think Chicago, New York are probably your two most likely landing spots.
I could definitely see something. If there's a wild card in there, that'd be quite interesting too. I just don't see it.
Houston.
I've heard the name. That's a Bosch destination right there. At least I'm thinking.
I think Bosch would have a very interesting time playing for Kevin McHale.
Well, you think LeBron's decision will also be affected by this whole Kevin Love drama going on?
Potentially.
Yeah.
I see them as kind of, well, first of all, obviously LeBron isn't going to Minnesota. So,
right, no.
And as to whether or not Love is going to leave Minnesota and then where he would land if he does leave Minnesota, it could affect that depending, what if Love were to end up in Chicago?
That's right.
Would that increase the attraction for Chicago for LeBron? Would it decrease the attraction for Chicago for LeBron? I don't know the answer to that. Or what if Love were to end up in New York?
And then there's the whole situation with really, where do the Celtics fall into this? We've heard reports that they have the best package available.
And yet there were
And then later today there was a report that says
not good enough.
Not good enough.
Yeah.
It's getting to the point where who do you believe
I don't know.
Do you believe Flip Saunders saying he's even available?
First of all, I'd like to point out how excited I am that Flip Saunders is going to be coaching again. One of my favorite moments in NBA history was watching a game where Flip Saunders was the coach and Bill Walton was the commentator of the game. And Flip Saunders, something happened, there was not a called foul or something like that. And Bill Walton goes, "Flip Saunders is irate." And then they switch the camera to Flip Saunders, and he's just kind of standing there looking up at the bench. And so ever since then, people who I watch sports with were always talking about Flip Saunders being irate. And so when I found out that Flip Saunders is coaching again this year, I'm like, I can't wait for him to be irate again.
Be irate again.
But anyway, besides that, Flip Saunders was saying today that the Celtics package wasn't good enough, but he didn't say that someone else had a better package.
No, he didn't.
So does that mean Love stays where he is? I don't see Minnesota doing that
I don't
because
either.
Love has already said he doesn't want to stay in Minnesota. There's 1 year left on the contract there. If they want to get anything for him, they've got to trade him. They're going to do it in the offseason. He's going to have more value in the offseason than he does mid-season for a team and he's going to have more value pre-draft than he does post-draft because of the availability of potentially for
and
picks.
That seems to me like what's the big drawback is right here is waiting up for this draft that's coming next week.
And so the question is do one of those teams who have draft picks ahead of the Celtics, one of those first 5 teams, are they willing to put one of those top 5 picks on the table for Kevin Love, along with whatever else they may have?
Now, here's the question for you. If you were Danny Ainge, would you give them the picks to make this happen?
I would give them the number 6 pick plus Sellinger and some scrub off the end of the bench.
Some people just don't want to budge with Sellinger.
I just think Love is an upgrade on Sellinger. He's going to be a better fit now than anyone when they're going to draft at 6.
Right.
And you still have 17, which isn't you're going to pick someone up at 17 who's going to contribute. Whether or not he's going to be an all-star, obviously, I don't think he would be. But
should they also be thinking about the other picks that they have for next year too with this process?
I think so. I think that's a piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
Is Rondo and Love enough to win a championship?
Right.
Probably not.
Right.
But is Rondo and Love plus one of these picks next year
Yep.
especially if it's a high lottery pick, which one of them is going to be,
Yep.
enough for Love next year. Another one's going to be anywhere from a 1 to a 7 or 8 pick next year.
Right.
That could be enough to win a championship.
Right. Right.
In an NBA where LeBron is aging, where Duncan is retired, Kobe is gone. Indiana's a good young team in the Eastern Conference, but is it enough to possibly get there? Absolutely, it is. So I think that weighs big on that.
Yeah, one of the things I keep going back and forth on is the overall quality of this draft coming in right now.
It's a very high quality draft.
They're saying it's high quality, and I think, at least from Danny Ainge's point of view, my hope at least is that they overvalued it so that you can use that pick, give them off to Minnesota, and get the better steal at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think Love is going to be better than any player they get at 6.
Yeah.
Will Love be willing to play with Rondo? Because we know people have difficulty playing with Rondo.
That's true.
But if they can't make that trade, whoever they get at 6, I think we're looking at a longer rebuilding process.
Yes.
And I think if they don't get Love and they draft someone at 6, I think there's a likelihood they try to trade Rondo.
Is this a process that's going to be like the Garnett, Ray Allen?
I think it's an if-and kind of thing. If they get Love, I think it sets them up to possibly bring in somebody else as a third player.
Right.
Looking at next year's draft pick to putting together a complete package.
Right.
If they aren't able to get Love, I think there's a big chance that they trade Rondo at some point. Maybe not before the season, might be mid-season next year, but I think there's a chance they trade Rondo, especially dependent upon who they pick up in that. If they go ahead and draft Marcus Smart, for instance, from Oklahoma State, as a point guard, Rondo becomes very tradable.
He does.
So it'll be interesting to see how that works.
I'm not in
itself
love
out.
with Rondo as a player, I have to say, on the Celtics. There's some that it's back and forth. I almost feel it's 50-50 with the amount of love that people feel towards Rondo.
The thing with Rondo is he played really well when he was playing with all-stars, but who wouldn't? Because, all those assists he piled up, but you look at who
I
he was
just think with
passing
Rondo,
to.
with no surrounding, supporting actors
he
in
can't
a way.
create his own offense.
He's nothing.
He can't create his own offense. He needs those guys to pass to on the wings
Yep.
or inside or whatever, and he's very good at that. He's a very good passer and a good ball handler and a good defensive player when he's allowed to play defense. So he has all those things going for him. He cannot create his own offense.
Nope.
Nobody respects his shot at all.
Nope.
And so he needs to be on a team that has people who get open and can react to him for a dump off pass and that kind of thing. Love could be one of those players, absolutely.
Yep.
So I think he could play with Love, absolutely. But we have to see that happen first.
Right. I know the Celtics had been trying for a while to trade Rondo and to get the best package that they could out of the whole thing.
That's hard to do when he was coming off the knee surgery.
Again, coming off that surgery, it was very difficult. But I also think that the Celtics might overvalue him a little bit more than other teams might.
Possibly. And again, he has the reputation of being hard to play with.
Yeah.
Being a hard, and so that's hard to get rid of that kind of reputation.
And the reputation of having a dinner and not being with the team and flying back and that whole situation from last year. But
anyway.
That's for another show.
So just carrying that forward, I don't know if you're prepared for this question or not, but I am, so I'm going to ask it.
Okay, go ahead.
And that is, if they don't get Love and they draft, do you have a thought as to who they may draft? Celtics?
I would like to see the Vonleh kid come
Noah
here since
Vonleh.
he has the Boston roots.
Yep.
He's from Haverhill and everything, and I've actually seen him play.
6'9" from Indiana.
I know what he's like, but it's that whole, is he mentally tough?
Yeah.
Is he tough enough to be in that Boston market?
Yeah,
and
I don't know the answer to that.
I don't see that happening.
I would love to see them, of course. I always want a big doofy center.
Yep.
So that's my basketball thing.
Yep.
Though I think that what's his name there with the long stringy hair, the center this year that they picked up.
Olynyk.
Kelly Olynyk.
Yeah.
He can fill that role nicely, and so it's not as though they don't have
Yeah.
anybody. So I think Vonleh would be a great pick.
Ideally do you see falling at like number 6? Do you think it could be a Vonleh?
Vonleh could go number 6, could go as high as 4.
Yep.
I think you could be looking at Julius Randle from Kentucky. I think you could be looking at Doug McDermott from Creighton, who I find very intriguing because he's a senior.
Yep.
As opposed to the rest of these guys who are freshmen mostly.
Yep.
So he's got those couple extra years of experience.
He's been around the block a little bit.
And a couple extra years of experience means he can step into the NBA game. He's still young, obviously, but I think it gives him the ability to step into the NBA.
I hadn't thought about that. I like that approach with another 2 years or 3 years into a system is pretty important.
And he's used to winning. Creighton did very well in the NBA, in the NCAA tournament over the last couple of years. So I think that I'm intrigued by him personally.
Right.
Whether or not the Celtics will go for that, I don't know. But that's anyway. That's kind of.
Yeah, it will be interesting. We will find out next week.
Next week.
That's the big. That's the big night.
So we've got 6 or 7 days to figure out. I think if they don't trade for Love before the draft, they're not going to get him.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say so. I would say so
it's going to happen.
So there may be something in the works right now, but
whatever's going to happen is going to happen in the next week.
Have to take a look and see what happens. Cross your fingers if you want Kevin Love.
Yeah.
So, well, any other news that we have for basketball?
I don't think so.
I think we covered a lot of basketball.
We covered a lot of basketball,
but we left two particular sports in general, and then we're going to go with the World Cup.
The World Cup.
We have to go with the World Cup. I was speechless Monday night with the USA.
Fascinating things coming out of the World Cup. Of course, we always think of soccer as the poor stepchild of sports in America, and yet the television ratings have been off the chart.
First of all, I have to say that we have never talked about soccer on Face the Facts, so we're making history tonight.
And I have never talked about soccer on my show, except to talk about how much I dislike it.
Yeah.
But they say the television ratings in New York City for the game Monday night were higher than the Stanley Cup Finals games that the Rangers were in.
I just find that's amazing.
I think it had like a 12 share or something like that, which is unbelievable.
Yep.
That was quite a game on Monday night. It was funny because Wikipedia, John Brooks who's the guy who scored the goal towards the end of the game. His Wikipedia article changed, and it said that he was the greatest American since Abraham Lincoln.
Oh, really? Oh, very nice.
Which I found amusing.
Yeah.
The question is does something like this make soccer a legitimate sport in America?
Right.
Every year they tell us, in 20 years, soccer is going to be the sport because all the kids are playing it.
Yeah.
Well, they told us that 20 years ago, too.
They did.
And it was true 20 years ago, all the kids are playing it, but that doesn't necessarily translate into popularity 20 years later. I think the big problem soccer has is actually what happened with Brazil and Italy yesterday, which is playing 90-minute halves in a 3-hour game and having a 0-0 tie at the end. Americans hate that with a passion.
You need more goals.
You need more goals.
And less flops.
More goals and less flops.
Yes.
And so how do you do that? Do you make the goals bigger? Do you make the players smaller? I don't know. Do you make
the field smaller?
Do you make the field smaller? I don't know. I actually think it would go the other way.
Make it bigger.
I've coached a little bit of soccer in my time, and playing on a small field can be very, very challenging. With the big field opens up.
You set up more plays.
You can set up more plays. You can have more passing and more assists and that kind of thing on a big field. But it's hard to make the fields bigger when the stadiums are already all built.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's the piece that prevents it from becoming a major sport in America, in my opinion, is the lack of scoring. Americans hate going to a 3-hour, 4-hour event and leaving with a 0-0 tie.
Right.
It leaves you empty.
It does.
And soccer, that happens all the time.
What I found amazing, for me at least, for watching this World Cup is the interest that you're able to have now watching the sport. And from watching the USA game from Monday, and even all the other games in general, you feel a difference from just watching an ordinary, regular soccer game. Because I wouldn't.
I think the difference you feel is...
I understand it's the World Cup feel.
Right.
But I think ESPN and the networks have a little bit to do with it because they're playing it up and talking about it more.
The other difference you feel...
They want your interest.
Is that the crowds in the stadiums are so into it.
Yeah, they are.
It's like the Olympics.
Yeah.
Do you watch fencing at any other time of the year? No.
You watch curling any other time of the year.
You watch curling any other time of the year.
No.
Do you watch track and field?
No, you don't.
You don't. But when they're in a stadium with 90,000 people watching a 100-yard dash race in the Olympics, it's exciting.
Yeah.
And I think the World Cup is the same kind of thing. That the audiences in the stadiums are so into it, and you can't help but feel that electricity, even when you're watching on TV.
Yeah.
I also think that what's happened in America over the last 10 to 15 years, of course, is that the international community in America, the Brazilian Americans, et cetera, have increased the interest in their national team.
Right.
And so when Brazil is playing, for instance, all the Brazilian Americans are watching because they're really into it. And that just can't help but translate into interest to their friends and whatever all over the place. And so I think those two things, have really helped soccer.
Yeah, I think they're really trying their best to play it up
Yep.
and to get the best interest at heart of all of us here in the United States.
Yeah.
Because we know soccer is a worldwide
Sure.
beloved sport and all that. It's not so much in the United States, but I think from what we've seen so far is that it's definitely growing.
Yeah.
Growing with a lot of passion and, even love.
Certainly the international soccer game is. It'll be interesting to see
Yeah.
if that translates into the MLS, for
Yeah.
instance. I don't know if it will or not.
Yeah.
But certainly the international game, and even Olympic soccer was followed very closely
Right.
a couple years ago in London. And so you have the World Cup this year, and in 2 years again you'll have the Olympics again. And so if they continue that passion over every couple of years like that, I think it has the potential to grow.
Yeah, one thing that you said that really picked up some interest from me is the youth with soccer and helping, like you said, 20 years from now, is to be world renowned and
Sure.
the most beloved sport ever.
Yeah.
You don't see that still. And I think that that's something that maybe the World Cup will help generate a little bit more.
Sure.
But at least here in our area, the major sports that you see the kids love are, hockey and baseball,
Right.
football,
Yeah.
basketball too. But
Yeah.
those are your traditional core
Yeah,
sports.
though given that this was where basketball was invented, I don't see the passion for basketball that I do for the others and the
Yeah.
kids. I mean,
Yeah.
they play it, they like it, but
I
it's
think
all-
the
it's-
kids
a
get
lot of
discouraged with the big net being up there missing, and they just have that give up kind of attitude.
I think for a lot of kids, it's basketball is their secondary sport. They
Yep.
play something else, whether it be baseball or football, and that's their primary. And then the secondary sport is basketball.
Yep.
There are a lot of kids that play soccer, but there aren't a lot of kids who say soccer is my
Do you
favorite
think it's
sport.
because a lot of kids are seeing certain sports and saying, this is very hard. I'm going to have to try harder. You think it's an effort standpoint?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I do think that the kids want to emulate their heroes that they see. And what sports do they see on TV? They see football and
yeah.
basketball and baseball and
They do.
hockey, and they don't see as much soccer. And so they reach a certain level when they realize that there's nowhere to go in soccer, and so they tend to move towards the other sports.
I even see like lacrosse. Lacrosse is a prime example. I think that that's probably the sport that at least 75% of the kids now at a young age are playing.
Interesting.
And I think that has maybe a little bit to do with hockey or
Sure.
the ability to
Hockey for
move
kids who can't skate.
Exactly, like me or something like
Yeah,
that.
right.
But you're seeing kids be very bored with baseball or very
Yeah.
bored with soccer.
Yeah.
Does that have to do maybe with the physical activity involved? Is there too much,
I think
boring things going on?
when I watch kids play lacrosse is very similar to soccer in terms of the running around without you have to run without the ball, and that's hard to teach
Right.
kids to do. And so I see lacrosse is very similar to soccer in that regard, though it can be more physical on the one end.
Yeah.
On the other side, it does require a lot of physical effort for no reward,
Right.
which kids don't like. Americans don't like. As a general rule of thumb, if we're going to put in the effort, we want to get a reward at the end. And you have that in basketball. You have that in football.
Yeah.
You have that in baseball. There's less quote unquote physical effort in baseball, but you usually get a reward for it.
Sure.
You make the catch, you get the hit, you get the strikeout or whatever. In soccer and lacrosse, you run up and down the field, and you might never touch the ball.
No.
Or you might get one or two touches of the ball in a game to clear it or something like that, and it's just a very different.
And it's
sport.
discouraging for the kids because they have that, no one's passing me the ball, I don't like this anymore or something like that. But
Well, I think we've talked enough soccer.
well, speaking of the soccer, just before we end, do you have a favorite to win this all?
I always go with Brazil.
Okay.
Brazil, as a general rule of thumb, is one of the best soccer teams, and they're the home team.
Yep.
And the passion for soccer in Brazil is off the charts. I've been to
Yep.
Brazil, and when I was in Brazil 7 years ago, I was there where there was a big local match happening. Everywhere it was like Red Sox Yankees.
Right.
Everywhere, it was bigger than Red Sox Yankees. Everywhere you looked, either you were for Azul or you were for, I forget the name of the other team. And all the stores had one colors or the other, all the, on the highway signs, and everywhere you looked, they were either for this team or that team. And it's just, soccer is so huge in Brazil. And that coupled with the fact that they're the home team, I see Brazil.
You like Brazil as a chance? I like Germany.
Great team also.
Yep. The Schweinsteiger.
Yeah,
I love that name.
The way Germany plowed through Portugal the other day.
And that's no pun intended. They
plowed through them. It was wow.
I was pretty impressed with that, and I really think that they could be.
I think Germany's a great pick.
That could be a dangerous run to get in the World Cup too. So. We hope you enjoyed the soccer part there. That was the most we've ever talked soccer.
I guarantee you we will never talk soccer again. Maybe in a couple of weeks.
Maybe in a couple of weeks talking about, Germany wins or whoever, or Brazil. But we did save the best for last, at least the most that we think could be debated and discussed and argued and clawed through and all that mumble jumble together. That's the Red Sox.
The Red Sox.
We go from a championship from 2013 to a team that has pretty much been in all sorts of different avenues for the start of the 2014 season.
The highest their record has reached this season is 500. That's the highest they've ever been. They've got there a couple of times. The second game of the season, after they won the second game of the season and they lost the first one, they were 500. And then they lost a bunch of games and they clawed back maybe at the end of April, something like that, to reach 500. Then they went on that historic losing streak right after that. And so it's a bizarre season.
My first question of the whole thing was, are you surprised at how this has been so far?
I'm surprised by a couple different things.
Okay.
I'm surprised at how good the pitching has been. The pitching has been better than last year.
Yeah, it has.
Both the starting pitching and the bullpen. I think they're the second best bullpen in the major leagues, or they're in the American League at any rate. The pitching has been outstanding, but the offense, I'm surprised at how anemic the offense is. And when you look at the numbers, John Farrell continually points at they have guys on base that just can't get them in. But even with that, I mean, their team batting average is like 249 or 248 or something like that.
You might be a little generous with that.
Well, that's what I remember from the other day. It might have gone down over these last couple of days with the Minnesota Twins, but I mean, that's like 8th in the league or something like that. So their offensive production is way down. And granted, they have a lot of guys. Ellsbury's gone. He's replaced by Jackie Bradley Jr. Jackie Bradley Jr. is a superior defensive player to Ellsbury, in my opinion. But offensively, can't hold a candle to him.
No.
Guy can't hit over 200. I mean, he's just not. Maybe he's coming around a little bit now, but he's it's going to take him a long time to get out of that. With they're up to 200, 250 at bats at this point. So you have that. You had the Grady Sizemore experiment, which they just released.
That crashed and burned
yesterday. It looked promising, but I mean, I give them all the props in the world for giving it a try. It would cost them virtually no money. He had a huge upside. He was a great player before his injury. So you have that. Daniel Nava fallen off the edge of the earth. Now he has started to come back in a big way. I think in the month of June he's hit 400 or something like that, and he's raised his batting average 50 or 60 points since he came back from the minors. But I mean, you wouldn't necessarily have anticipated a 300 hitter who came in 3rd or 4th in the MVP voting last year to completely fall off the table.
Right.
And at the beginning of the season you weren't getting it out of Bogarts either.
No.
And you weren't getting it out of Middlebrooks.
Nope.
And Napoli goes down with an injury, and Victorino goes down with an injury. And so who are you left with? You're left with Pedroia and Ortiz. They're not going to pitch to Ortiz when nobody's hitting behind him.
Nope.
Pierzynski has been fine.
Yep.
I think he's pretty much a replacement for what we got out of Saltalamacchia last year.
Yep.
Saltalamacchia's actually done better this year.
Yep.
But there's no way you can predict that. So I think he's done a fine job replacing him. But it's like the offense has completely fallen apart.
Right. What I look at it from this team is you saw so much promise from last year. They were so high.
Yeah.
And they start the season just trying to kind of almost in a way piece things together.
Yeah.
Injuries started to mount at the beginning of the season.
And there's nothing you can do about that.
I don't think you can blame injuries right now on this.
I don't think you can either.
You can't. You're seeing David Ortiz. The power numbers are there. The RBIs are there, but the problem is the protection. He's just not hitting there.
Yeah.
I think the biggest issue, and there's two of them, is that Jacoby Ellsbury not being there and Dustin Pedroia just being MIA.
Yeah. I don't know. Pedroia, again, is having an outstanding defensive season.
Yep.
But I think offensively he hasn't hit a groove yet.
Nope.
And so he's just and even when he gets a hit, a lot of infield hits for Pedroia this year, he doesn't seem to be squaring up on the ball.
Do you think the contract's bugging him? Ever since he signed the contract?
No, I don't.
You don't think it's that?
The reason I don't is he didn't have to sign that contract when he did it. He did it voluntarily, and I think he's a big enough guy, to recognize it is what it is. He made a decision to do something, and I think he's the kind of guy that's willing to live up with his decision. I don't think it's a contract. I think there's still something physically wrong with him. I do.
With an injury or something like that?
With some kind of injury, and he's the guy who plays through it.
Yep.
And isn't going to go out because of when he broke his ankle a couple years ago, he was on the field.
Well,
2
even
days
look at
later.
the first game of the season last year. He had the broken thumb or whatever it was. He played the entire season with that. He goes and has the surgery and stuff like that. And then there was a problem with the wrist.
There was a problem with the wrist early this season.
And we saw the wrist be problems with players even like we're gonna have a Nomar reference on this.
Nomar.
Okay,
Yep.
we had Nomar had a wonderful season in 2000. In 2001, I remember he got hit right in the wrist.
Hit right in the wrist.
Never was the same again.
Never the same player after that.
Never the same.
You had the same thing with Jim Rice.
Yeah.
Want to go back? The Jim Rice reference for those of you in the crowd who are as old as I am.
Yep.
Same exact thing. Had a wrist injury. Never came back. Was never the same player.
Yep.
86. Jim Rice hit 30-something home runs and 100 RBIs and was third or fourth in the MVP voting.
Yep.
Injured his wrist at the beginning of 87. Was never the same player. By the 2 years later, he was gone. And the wrist is a
think
huge
about
thing.
it. The wrist.
In batting,
It's
it's
almost
it's
a
huge.
devastating injury.
Yeah.
Whether it's broken or whatever.
And the other thing with the wrist is it's entirely exposed.
Yeah.
For a batter, it's entirely exposed, and it is one of the key pieces of equipment when you're batting. So I can see where a wrist injury would bug you. So I think that's entirely likely with Pedroia.
When the Red Sox released Sizemore, that was as of yesterday. I know this will be shown in a little bit of while, but Sizemore was released yesterday, and I really wasn't surprised by that. I thought he needed to get released a little sooner.
Yeah.
The reason why they did it now is because Victorino's on his way back.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. I don't think Victorino's going to help this mess out either. I don't think Victorino is going to ever be fully healthy again in his major league career.
What Victorino can do if he's healthy with the lineup is push the lineup down.
Yep.
Because Victorino is a classic number 2 hitter.
Right.
So if he hits number 2,
Right.
that means Bogarts can hit number 6.
Right.
Behind
It's
Napoli. It adds depth to the lineup, and suddenly you're looking at hitters down to 6 and 7. Well, right now, once you're done with Napoli, there's nobody left.
Right.
So you're.
What do you mean? Steven Drew's a $10 million shortstop. He's got a hit.
He's been coming around a little bit, Steven Drew. I mean, I think they rushed him back to the majors. I don't think they needed to. I think
Was it Steven Drew or the agent?
I think it was the agent rushing him back to the majors. What did he have? 25 at bats in the minors, and that was his spring training. I mean, that's not enough. He should have spent 50 at bats, 75 at bats.
Were you for or against Drew coming back?
The problem I have with it is Brock Holt, who's playing great, and you have no place to play the poor guy.
Yeah.
I think. When Middlebrooks went down, if you could have kept Holt at short or Bogarts at short with Holt playing third, which is what they did originally.
Right.
They brought Drew in, and now they have 3 guys for 2 positions. Holt is going great. Bogarts is going great.
Yep.
Where do you play him? Well, now he's playing first base. Now he's playing right field, center field,
Are you comfortable
left
with
field.
him in center field?
I'm not.
Okay.
I think he is the Trot Nixon of this team.
Okay.
He plays with guts. He plays with grit. He gives everything he has on
Yep.
every play. He never played a game in the outfield until he played in the majors a couple of days ago.
Right.
And he hasn't made any big mistakes.
No.
But
Made an unbelievable catch last night.
that catch last night was unbelievable.
Yep.
But those mistakes are bound to come.
Sure.
Because just of inexperience. That has nothing to do with his desire, nothing to do with his talent.
It could be for anybody.
It could be, but anybody who hasn't played a position before is going to make mistakes. When you make a mistake in the outfield, it's a 2 or 3 base mistake.
Yeah.
When you make a base in the infield, the guy gets to first. When you make a mistake in the outfield, that guy is rounding second and headed to third.
Right.
And that's a game changer. And that's why errors in the outfield they're huge.
Yeah.
They're huge. And it's going to come at some point. Today he played in right field.
Right.
And, it's toughest right field in Major League Baseball. Nothing happened. It was fine.
Yeah.
But he also didn't really do anything. They didn't really hit the ball at right field. Of course, there were virtually no hits today at all.
Yeah.
That's I would like to see Holt in the infield. I don't care what infield position he plays. I think he's better in the infield.
If he continues on this wonderful pace that he's been doing, doesn't seem like he has a spot in the infield. So that leads the question. We have another problem coming to the Red Sox very shortly. The Victorino's returning for this West Coast trip.
Right.
What do you do?
I think that probably, even though he's back, Victorino isn't going to play every game.
Right.
So I think they're probably going to rotate through the outfield. I think they're going to rotate Nava, Victorino, Bradley, and Holt through the outfield. You know, you have 3 positions with 4 players, and they'll figure out a way to do that to spell Victorino so he'll play a game. He might only play every other game. For instance, on was a 10-game road trip coming up, he might play 5 games on the road trip, and that way you're getting in Holt and Nava and all these guys into.
You do have that one spot with Cecchini is taking the spot that was Sizemore's.
Right.
So,
but you're going to lose a spot for 6 games because of Workman's suspension.
You are. That's true.
Yeah.
That's another challenge
I
right there.
think Cecchini goes back down when Victorino goes up, but they still need another. And then Workman is gone, so you're playing with 24. You're playing one man short for at least 6 of those games.
Exactly.
Actually, I think one of them was today. So 5 of those games, you're going to be playing one man short.
When all said and done, when all is said and done,
do
you see Jackie Bradley going back to Pawtucket? Does he deserve to be back to Pawtucket?
This is what I think is going to happen.
Yep.
All right, here's the big Red Sox thing.
Yep.
All right.
Breaking news.
As of today, they are 4 games out of the wild card.
Yep.
If they go 500 on the road trip and come back to Fenway and can put together a string of wins, and they stay in contention for a wild card, I think that Bradley goes back to Pawtucket. If they go 2-8 on the road trip and they're out by 7 or 8 games out of the wild card, then I think Bradley Jr. stays to get experience in the majors. Right. I also think they probably trade Koji Uehara. And I think it's an if. You know, so it really depends on what happens over the next 2
You have
weeks.
Koji mentioned.
Yeah. It depends on what happens over the next 2 weeks.
You have to mention John Lester.
Same thing with John Lester. I think, I feel a little bit differently about John Lester.
First of all, will he be back next year?
This is the thing. If they trade John Lester this season, A, they're giving up, which is fine if that they need to. But B, they're also saying they're going into rebuilding mode. If they re-sign John Lester for next year, it means they still think this team can contend with a few tweaks. Because they're not going to sign a $100 million pitcher and then have him play on a 4th place team for 3 years or 4 years. So that's their judgment call. That's what their judgment call is going to be. If they re-sign him, it means that they feel as though they can still contend. If they don't re-sign him, it means that they're not throwing in the towel, but they're saying we need to rebuild, and they're going to use what they get for Lester to do it. So that's the difference. Will he be here next year? It depends on that assessment. My assessment is I think this team can contend. They're number 1 in the league in one-run games.
Right.
They've had 24, 25 one-run games. You know, 5 of those games go the other way, and they're in the wild card right now.
Yeah, they are.
And they're only 2 games out of first place.
Right.
So I think this team can contend. If Jackie Bradley were to hit 30 points higher, 230, which isn't a lot to ask.
Right.
You know, if Nava can hit 30 points higher, 230, which isn't too much to ask. You're getting a few more hits in there. A bunch of those one-run games turn around. I think this team isn't that far away.
Yeah.
And so what I would do, I would re-sign Lester.
Yep.
I also think that Lester is there's 3 guys that kind of define the Red Sox right now: Ortiz, Pedroia, and Lester. And they've been there for all been there for 2, Ortiz for 3 championships, and those are your core guys. And so I would re-sign Lester.
So try anything you can to re-sign him.
I would.
Okay.
I would. Also, how many aces are there? Sorry, there's a long answer to a short question. How many aces are there in baseball? Number 1 guys.
There really aren't.
Number 1 guys. There are half a dozen, 6.
Yeah.
Lester is one of those guys.
Yeah, he is.
You're not going to replace him with some guy from Pawtucket who's doing really well. Ruby De La Rosa is not going to replace John Lester. You know,
I have
Felix
to say,
DeBrant
one of
is
the
not gonna
things, as
replace
much
John
as I
Lester.
love hearing about the prospects down on the farm, I'm getting sick of it. Because you're not seeing hitting coming from anybody from Pawtucket, Portland, no matter what it is. You're seeing pitching. You're seeing Workman De La Rosa, and even Alan Webster when he gets a chance. You know, you have a lot of other names that are there. They have to have at least one quality guy who is your ace that can be your bread and butter.
The formula for this team over the last 10 years, where they've won 3 World Series, is to have a mixture of homegrown talent and 1 or 2 well-placed free agents.
So the hope
your
is
Kurt Schilling, you know, that kind of thing, where you bring in and you win a championship. You know, the rest, you know, with the 2007 team, was full of homegrown guys. Ellsbury, Pedroia,
Lester.
Yeah. Buck Holtz. I mean, all these guys were homegrown guys. Papelbon was still on the team. Homegrown guy. They were all homegrown guys.
Right.
With a few well-placed free agents. Ortiz isn't a homegrown guy, but
you had like a Mike Lowell there.
Mike Lowell,
he was a guy that was a trade.
Yeah, a few well-placed trades or free agents.
Julio Lugo. I don't want to go down that track.
But you know what? But you understand what I mean.
Yeah, exactly.
That's been the formula for success. So the formula for failure for the 86 years prior to 2004 was let's just get in as many free agents as we can, and it failed.
Yep.
So you have to have some of those homegrown guys who can do it to be successful. You have to have guys that are earning major league minimum or low salaries who are producing for you, and then you can afford to bring in one or two well-placed. So it's a mix. You can afford to bring in one or two well-placed free agents. Well,
the Red Sox opened that checkbook for him.
For Lester?
That's what I'm wishy-washy with. Lester, if he continues the pace that he's on, is looking 5-6 years,
5 and 120,
125, 140 million in that ballpark. Is that worth that? But in today's day and age,
over the last few years, the Red Sox have shown themselves unwilling to do that.
Yeah, they have.
They would rather have a guy for 3 years at 60 or 70 than a guy for 5 years at 100 or 120, 130. They didn't get into any of the big free agent pushes over the last several years. And by the way, they've shown some wisdom in that. Look at some of the big free agent pushes over the last couple of years. Prince Fielder, Josh Hamilton, Albert Pujols. Now, granted, Pujols is kind of coming around now, but all these guys signed for these gigantic sums of money, and they haven't been worth it. They just haven't been worth it. I think the Red Sox might do 4 years with Lester. I think they would be willing to do 400, 400. And see what happens.
Right.
But we'll see. We'll see.
Yep, it's going to be interesting because it will almost be like deja vu from last off season when they didn't open their pocketbook for Ellsbury. It's basically in that same kind of grounds.
It's the same
It's in
thing.
the same grounds.
Now, they did open the checkbook for Ellsbury, but the Yankees came in and blew him away.
Yeah, they did.
I think the same thing could happen with Lester. I think what could happen with Lester is the Red Sox offer 4 and 100. 4 for 100. And somebody's going to come in, the Yankees, who could use pitching. They're going to come in at 5 and 140, and I don't blame them for taking that. If someone offered me $40 million extra dollars, I would take it too. So I see that as a potential scenario.
You realize more and more as these contracts get signed that it is a business. It's not about the team.
It's not about the team. It's not about
where they play
the laundry.
For. It's about who's going to pay me the most.
Who's going to pay me the most? And people get all over him for that. But to be honest with you, there isn't a single one of us that wouldn't do the exact same thing. To put it into, it's hard for us to think in terms of $40 million. But let's think in terms of thousands of dollars. All right? If someone offered you a job where they said, we'll give you $100,000 a year for 4 years, $100 a year for 4 years, which is more in the range of something that you and I can understand. Someone says they'll give you the same exact job, doing the same exact thing, and they're going to give you $140,000 a year, and they guarantee you 5 years of it. Every single one of us would do that.
Sure.
Every single one of us would do that. Now, you might have to move to another city, but 90% of the people I know would do that. So why do we get all over athletes for doing the same thing?
That's a great point. It's a great point.
Heck, most of us would do it for $10,000 more.
Exactly. In this day and age,
let's be honest. Most of us who are regular employees of companies, if we work for Microsoft and Apple offers us the same exact job for 10
it's a great point.
or 12 grand more, we're going to do it.
And people don't think about that.
No, we're going to do it. It's just it's an order of magnitude.
I would be guilty of not thinking of that on occasion because you get so wrapped up with the love of what a player has done on in the field for your team.
And you get wrapped up in the magnitude.
Yeah.
He already has millions of dollars. Why does he need millions of more? Yeah. Well, there is some truth to that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, every single one of us would do the same thing.
Sure.
So how can we blame them for doing it? That's what I think.
The last part from the Red Sox is obviously the offense. They need the bat. How do they fix it? Can they get somebody? And who's available? Who's on the Christmas list?
I don't really see that there's anybody available.
I don't either.
With the way Major League Baseball is set up now with that extra wild card slot, something like out of the 30-some-odd teams, 28 of them are still in it.
Especially this year.
Especially this year, that a lot of parity this year in Major League Baseball.
A lot.
Nobody's running away with it except maybe Oakland.
Yep.
Nobody is running away with it this year. So who's available? The kid from Arizona, maybe. What's his name? Gonzalez or something like.
Oh, Colorado, Carlos Gonzalez.
Colorado. He might be available.
Yep.
No, there's a kid from Arizona too. Whose name
Paul,
is escaping me.
Goldschmidt.
No. Maybe I don't know. Anyway, I mean, teams like that,
Something like that.
maybe sellers, but again, those guys are inexpensive, and they don't have contracts coming up. So why would they get rid of them? There's no reason why they would get rid of them.
I think the answer to the question, there really isn't anybody available. I mean, the Dodgers, I think Matt Kemp.
I've heard Matt Kemp, but I wouldn't take Matt Kemp.
I wouldn't take him.
I wouldn't take Matt Kemp.
No.
I not at this point in time.
No.
I just don't.
You got Johnny Gomes. I mean, that's basically in the same kind of ballpark right there.
Yeah, I wouldn't take Matt Kemp. I think as a general rule of thumb, Matt Kemp is a better player than any of the outfielders we have right now.
Yeah.
When he's healthy and when he's complete, but you just don't know that that's true.
Yeah.
He's had injury plagues for the last 3 or 4 seasons. Mm-hmm. He's come back now, but he's only, again, because they have 4 outfielders in L.A., he's only playing. I wouldn't take Matt Kemp. And he's got a big number for a salary. I wouldn't take him.
I think we're going to have to wait a little longer to see really who's available. I mean, Giancarlo Stanton.
I think
the Marlins don't want to get rid of him.
If I were the Marlins, I wouldn't get rid of him. I think it's going to be closer to the trading deadline at the end of July is when we're going to see
some action.
Because there will be teams who will be out of it by then.
Sure. The last part here on our show that we do each time that we're with us is we face off.
Face off!
That does not mean that we're going one-on-one with goalies and goal sticks and pucks and all that. This is a little segment that we have for the guest and the host where if you think the statement is legit, then you say fact. If you think that the statement is only of the opinion, then you say opinion.
Okay.
So the first statement that we have is LeBron James will leave the Miami Heat.
Fact.
Okay. I also agree with that's a fact. You heard, if you were here earlier when you watched the show at the beginning part, my guess was the New York Knicks, and you were kind of in the same boat too.
I think probably Chicago.
You think Chicago?
I think Chicago.
Okay. Statement number 2. We did not talk about this at all, so this will be an interesting, it's a new little piece. Carmelo Anthony will become a Boston Celtic.
Opinion.
Okay. I also agree that that's an opinion. I think it would be an absolute disaster with Carmelo and Rondo together.
Carmelo Anthony, I have to be honest, is one of my least favorite players in the NBA.
He is mine as well.
He's got a lot of talent. I liked him coming out of Syracuse and when he went to Denver. But he's the guy that everyone says is the savior for every team he goes to, and he never does anything. I would not bring him to the Celtics.
Yep. Statement number 3, Rob Gronkowski will be out for more than 6 games this season.
Opinion. I think he's out for exactly 6 games this season.
Oh, really? Okay. So I actually think that you might even not see Gronk for maybe more towards the end of the season.
Okay.
I'm not banking on 6. I'm going 7, 8, 9, maybe he'll miss.
I'm thinking 6.
You're thinking 6?
I'm thinking 6.
In case you would like to find out more or watch more episodes of Face to Facts, you can check them out online and at NORCAM TV on their YouTube page for Nick Face.
And Kevin Vent.
We will see you next time on another episode of Face the Facts. Have a good rest of the week, and we'll see you soon.